The gentleman I'm about to introduce has my highest respect. In addition to, I know that he's a lover of Carnival, and he is also a lover of music. So I would simply say today is a good day for Diana Ross. She turns, 63? Diana Ross, 73 years old today. Teddy Pendergrass would have been 67, and I know my guest is familiar with both of them. Are you, sir?
Yes, I am.
I knew you would be.
I saw Diana Ross in Tobago one time.
Ah, yes, you had a pleasure indeed. A phenomenal performer. She's 73 today. That voice you hear, ladies and gentlemen, is former senator, former Law Association president, and senior counsel Martin Daly. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
You're welcome. Good morning to your listeners.
And I thank you very much. I read your column every day, every Sunday, so I urge our listeners to do exactly that. You will find it in the weekly edition of The Express, talking about Martin Daly. A lot of things here this morning, so we ask you for additional time, and you acquiesce for that. I am thankful. Let's get straight into it. Juryless trials. The right to a jury, to trial by a jury of your peers, is a fundamental principle of many justice systems worldwide. Protesters to non-jury trials fear that it is simply a way of going through the motions before eventually convicting people. Those are the opponents to juryless trials. Lawyers fear that because a jury has to be 100% sure of guilt before convicting, criminals are being acquitted simply because the jury does not understand the case and interprets this as a reasonable doubt, which is the threshold needed for exoneration. Folks say that if you keep having this system of a jury, there are many problems involved with it. Those problems have been articulated by our Attorney General. I ask of you, Senior Counsel, what is your position regarding juryless trials?
Well, I think a lot of the discussion is entirely artificial. And the reason why it is artificial is we barely apprehend and prosecute criminals because of the low detection rate and poor policing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why people believe, or people are trying to sell us the idea that if we fix, in inverted commas, fix the courts, we will be delivered from crime. The courts can't help us in the absence of proper policing. So that, in a sense, makes the discussion artificial. Then a number of the things that are said against the jury are very challengeable. First of all, I don't think there's any reason to assume that there's some lack of education or ignorance in jurors. Some of the wisest people in Trinidad, and you hear it on the talk shows, for example, are people who may not have a formal education. They may not have the certificate. We seem to think that people are only intelligent or cognitive, or capable of applying cognitive functions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't accept that the broad mass of jurors in some way fall below some kind of requisite standard. I simply reject that. As to the question of the intimidation of jurors, well, that brings us back to the same problem. If the policing is so poor and the deterrent effect of the law is so poor that we have to accept that jurors are going to be intimidated, that is hardly a good reason for changing the jury system. So I am very skeptical. And then, of course, when you come to trial by judge alone, that raises a whole set of problems for me, because a lot more is going to depend on the personality of the judge, his likes and his dislikes, his relationship with particular counsel, all of which are mitigated by having the jury as the judges of facts. But the discussion is artificial because we're not apprehending the serious criminals. But despite the fact that it is artificial, I've told you what I think are the things that we really need to sit down. I absolutely reject that we have to give in to intimidation. We have to fix this society because if jurors can be intimidated, so can be witnesses. And sad to say, so can be judges.
That's part of it.
If you're fixing all this because you can't deal with the intimidation by the criminals, then it's a wholly artificial discussion.
But is there also not the question of the cost of doing it, one, and two, while it is true, as you said, you have to first arrest people and you've got a lot of things to take care of, what currently exists in the court right now? What's
the big thing about the cost? How much did Taruba Stadium cost? You mean you're gonna take a shortcut in justice on grounds of cost? Didn't take no shortcut with spending on the Taruba Stadium and all the other erections. I absolutely reject the argument that jury is somehow costly. Well, then let's reduce the salaries of some of the people in the judicial system to save some money. It's a bad argument, and particularly to use the cost argument where justice and liberty is concerned. It's a bad argument. It's a scared argument.
Senior counsel, is this not just, as in the United States, a case of choice? The defendant can choose to waive a jury.
Oh, well, that's a different thing. And the government has very wisely, no doubt, because of the provisions of the Constitution, they have no doubt wisely started this process of attacking or undermining the jury by suggesting that, well, it'll be an option for an accused. I'm not much of a criminal practitioner, but I'd be very surprised if lawyers start advising their clients to appear before a judge alone. So it'll be a paper tiger as far as I'm concerned.
But if you have an informed citizenry and they understand that, for instance, if because I believe there would be people who would prefer to just plead guilty to some minor offenses just to get past this thing and not spend all this time trying to get to a court and the attendant costs and time delay involved in it.
Well, if you're going to have plea bargaining and guilty, you don't need to abolish a jury for that either.
Plea bargaining
that has nothing to do with the use of a jury. So I don't buy it. I mean, I don't have a traditionalist position on any of this. I just think the arguments that have been advanced against the jury are poor arguments. Some of them are cheapskate arguments. Some of them are artificial. And left to me, I would prefer to take my chance with 9 or 12 women, good and true, and not be exposed to the concentration of thought of a single judge. That would be very much my preference.
And the argument of speeding up the backlog in the system, you also reject that?
Well, I don't know how not having a jury is going to speed up the backlog in the system. Does that mean you're going to have to call less witnesses? Does that mean you're lowering the standard of proof? I don't understand that either. I accept that there are times when you have to put the jury out of hearing for legal arguments, but there are case management systems and pretrial review procedures that can take care of having those things done in advance of the trial without having to put the jury out of hearing. That's what we do in civil cases now. You have a pretrial review where all evidential objections are dealt with before the trial. That's another bad argument. We're dealing with that on the civil side.
Since so far I'm hitting 0, 0, 0 with all of them. let me throw another one at you. Martin Daly, senior counsel, is my guest. You are an attorney. There are many who in the public arena opine that lawyers are against this primarily because it impacts on their income. Is this simple talk or is it a reasonable speculation?
I don't have no income in criminal trials
not
you
specifically.
So not impacting mine.
Not you specifically.
No, I understand that, but of course people will say that. But they need. The discussion has been relatively uninformed. Let's put it like that. A lot of traditionalists don't want to re-examine the jury. Yes, there are arguments for not having the jury. For example, in high-class fraud cases or difficult, complex fraud cases. What complex fraud case have we had before the High Court? I think the only one we know about is 17 years in the preliminary inquiry system. So, yes, there may be certain types of case, a limited number of cases where you can perhaps show that the jury may be beyond them, things involving complex financial statements and things like that. I mean, one can see that that's a specialized and sensible exception, but this blanket attack on the juries. The point about it is, none of our governments are attacking the root causes of the problem, which are three. One is poor and incompetent policing. The second is the preference for personalities over enforcement of rules. And the third is the interlocking connections between the bad guys and the institutions that are supposed to protect. So until you attack those three things, flying off and saying, hang them, take away the jury, whatever, try them in short pants, none of those things will work. Because we have a fundamental problem with policing, and it's not just, we still don't have a proper forensic lab, we still don't have proper forensic facilities, bodies piling up. If you want a man in Trinidad gets sick, they have to put the man in Tobago on a boat to come. the man in Trinidad is usually on contract. When his contract runs out, there's a great panic that he won't be given evidence in all the cases that he's saying. Those are nuts and bolts they have to deal with. And that's another thing. If you can present a jury with proper forensic evidence, they'll be able to understand it real quick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're not attacking the root causes of any of this.
The last of the three you mentioned a moment ago is going to be one of the most challenging, which is to take out the guts of corruption that has gone beyond its the illegal boundaries is intertwined itself into the DNA and the lifestyle of the country. That is going to be
I hope you and your listeners will note that I use a rather more elegant phrase: interlocking connection.
Interlocking connection. 16 minutes after 11 o'clock, we're talking to Senior Counsel Martin Daly. We just looked at what was on the headline in that area there. By the way, I think you just had an attorney this morning also in agreement with you that we are talking about bad legislation. I think it's Ms. Elder.
Well, I have a conceptual problem with what they're being done. I haven't looked at the nuts and bolts. Well, I mean, I've read the acts, but I haven't looked at the nuts and bolts. I have expressed reservation when it comes to preliminary inquiries, which should have been abolished 20 years ago, as to whether loading up the DPP's office is a good idea from the point of view of work efficiency. I see the DPP gave evidence he's bursting at the seams. And then questions are going to arise about whether the DPP, whether constitutionally the DPP is the right person to decide whether there's sufficient evidence for a prosecution to go forward. He may be wearing two hats, and then the lawyers may be raising things about that.
Mm-hmm. All right.
We'll see, we have good lawyers in Trinidad and good courts, and all these things will have to come out in the wash. But while all of that is going on, we ain't catching nobody.
I hear what you're saying. And the party I referred to as an agreement with you is Senior Counsel Pamela Elder, who said
this is what Pamela says.
She said this is a wrecking ball. That's what she said, this legislation.
Yes, well, she's more intimate with the criminal law system than I am, but I would have thought her income would be more affected by the fact that they ain't catching nobody and bringing them to trial.
You see, you're gone there, you're gone on your own. Senior Counsel, I'm going to leave you on your own. Martin Daly is my guest. Let's get to the death penalty, because this is the area that I know we said we would focus on this morning. There are a lot of cases. Conventional wisdom is that the death penalty is not a deterrent. The Prime Minister made it very clear, I think it was last week. He said, look, I'm not discussing deterrent here. I am dealing with you commit the ultimate crime, you will pay the ultimate price. Now, the conventional wisdom is that death penalty is not a deterrent. There are many other studies, however, that happened between 2005 all the way up to 2014 by some specialist sociologist, Michael Radl, for instance, from the he's a chair at the Colorado University. We've got folks coming out from the University of Chicago, the chair of economics at Louisiana State University. Emory University also put out a study in 1970. And then the latest one we have, 2014, is from a professor, research fellow in empirical policy analysis at the Heritage Foundation, who was saying, as against the conventional wisdom that the executions are not a deterrent, the information now says differently, because the advocates are very loud, very vocal, but there are other ways to look at this situation that they point out from an economic standpoint, and from the study of over 10 years, they are seeing areas that is proven by their data that says, yes, the death penalty is in fact a deterrent.
Well, from time immemorial and long after I'm dead and gone, there will be long and learned discussions about whether the death penalty is a deterrent to murder. Mm-hmm. And one can see on a common sense basis that if someone commits what's called a crime of passion, at that moment when they're passionate, they may not think about the noose. Mm-hmm. Then there may be it may be different when for people who are committing murder for reward, robbing banks and so on. So I don't know. I really am turned off by the discussion about whether the death penalty is a deterrent. Mm. We in Trinidad have a much bigger problem now with deterrence, and I'm sorry to harp on this. But overall, the population, the law-abiding population now has a firm belief that if you commit a serious crime, quote unquote, nothing will come of it. Mm. So that if the deterrent effect of the law is breaking down in other areas, then it's hardly likely that the death penalty on its own will have a deterrent effect. And in any event, how is it going to deter someone who believes that the law can't catch up with them?
Mm-hmm.
So part of the difficulty we now have in Trinidad and Tobago is the general deterrent effect of the law. That is, the fear of apprehension, prosecution, and penalty has been so diluted by the things we have been discussing that talking about the deterrent effect of the death penalty in isolation really, again, I'm sorry to use the word, is rather artificial.
Mm.
But there are many other problems associated with this constant call about the death penalty. There are many other problems.
And I see your point, and it is very clear. It's not very difficult to follow what you're saying. First things first. But in the meantime, while work is being done to upgrade that, to make that better, we still have the issue of whether you are irretrievably locked into your position. That death penalty is not a deterrent. One, if you are locked into that position, and two,
I'm not locked into.
You're
anything.
not locked into it. I see. Okay.
What I am concerned about is that the deterrent effect of the law has been diluted way beyond any deterrent effect you might ascribe to the death penalty. So I don't have a strong view one way or the other because this is all very artificial. And in any event, it is not possible under present conditions to carry out the death penalty in Trinidad and Tobago because there are certain procedural obstacles
which is your
that will
Pratt and
have
Morgan
to be removed. So
and
each time a government comes in and talks about the death penalty, I write a column. I have copies of them in my hand. I write a column saying, hold on, you're talking about the death penalty. Have you forgotten the following rulings? And I itemize the rulings, and I itemize what those rulings say and what are the problems that have to be overcome.
Your Pratt and Morgan situation is your 5-year period that you have to carry this through, which brings me to the question of the CCJ. Will the CCJ, I'm clear on what you said before. Let's worry about apprehending people and doing all of that. But I'm speaking
I've gone past that now.
All right, we've gone past that. We are into the area here where you're talking about carrying out the penalty and the 5-year limitation that we have in order to carry through with this. I was in conversation, I think, 2 weeks ago with Professor Terence Farrell. We were on this. He's an advocate for the CCJ, as I believe you are, and that we should adopt this, and it should assist in us getting around this 5-year period because of a couple of things, including what you just mentioned, the abysmal apprehension situation we have here and delay in cases. Will that help getting the CCJ as part of as our final court of appeal?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Whether these constitutional cases about hanging go to the Privy Council or they go to the CCJ, the present procedural obstacles will remain the same. In fact, in preparation for this program, I went and reread the leading CCJ case on the death penalty, and it is quite clear that the CCJ intends to be faithful to the human rights principles that have out of which have arisen the obstacles to carrying out the death sentence. So transferring the problem from one court to another is not going to change anything.
Adherence to the
certain
please.
procedural obstacles besides Pratt and Morgan that have to be dealt with, and ultimately, you're not going to be able to fix this death penalty, the inability to carry out the death penalty without a constitutional amendment, which will require more than a 3/5 majority, probably require a 3/4 majority.
Transference of responsibility, but you're saying it is the same adherence to the question of cruel and unusual punishment, international.
Well, that
convention.
is one aspect. Can I, if you like, I can itemize. I have it in my hand.
Please do.
I have the 5 columns that I've written about this. Every time they bray about the death penalty, the first obstacle is Pratt and Morgan, which is the 5-year limitation. Now, you can, of course, avoid the Pratt and Morgan limitation by making your judicial system, your criminal justice system, Pratt and Morgan compliant. And I believe that after Pratt and Morgan came out, Pratt and Morgan is a long, old time thing now. It's 1993.
Yes.
It first came out. I believe that under the tenure of Chief Justice Clinton Bernard and under the tenure of Chief Justice Michael Elabestein, Trinidad and Tobago had in fact become Pratt and Morgan compliant without passing any law or anything. You try to make your procedures comply with Pratt and Morgan. And indeed, in a normal civilization, why should this whole process take more than 5 years? But here are the other difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
One difficulty is that there are two international bodies, UNCHR, which I think stands for the UN Committee on Human Rights, and there's the Inter-American body, I can't remember its full name. I think it's the IACHR or something international. Anyways, the Inter-American Commission. And traditionally, persons condemned to death have presented petitions to those bodies, and those bodies will produce a report, and the report will come back to the state that wishes to execute. Now, here are the problems attendant upon that. First of all, in a Privy Council case, the Privy Council said, you are entitled to have that. You're entitled to have your execution stayed until the international body has reported on your case. The Privy Council recognized that the international bodies take their sweet time because they don't want you to carry out the death penalty. But they said point blank, we are not extending the 5-year limit to include a further period for these international bodies to report. Trinidad and Tobago took the step of withdrawing from the treaty, at least that part that dealt with prisoners condemned to death. But the CCJ has nevertheless talked about the legitimate expectation. They say that the right to go to these bodies is not treaty-based, or it's not necessarily due process-based, but there is a legitimate expectation that you are entitled to petition these bodies. Where they are different from the Privy Council is they are more alert to the problem that those bodies must not be allowed to take as long as they like, and maybe no doubt at some time in the future they may pronounce on that. The next problem now, having become Pratt and Morgan compliant, you have to deal with the problem of the international bodies. Then the next problem is challenges to the Mercy Committee. The Constitution contains a body called the Advisory Committee on the Power of Pardon, commonly known as the Mercy Committee. For decades, the Privy Council said that where justice ends and mercy begins, you don't have to have formal procedures for mercy. Then they decided that they were going to change that. So they empowered a bigger panel of judges and said, no. When you go to the Mercy Committee, there's a minimum number of things that you must have before the Mercy Committee. I must tell you, incidentally, that one of the judges, Lord Hoffman, dissented very pungently. And although he said it in very elegant words, he basically accused them of moving the goalposts. So under present conditions, the Mercy Committee has to notify the condemned person that they will be meeting to consider his case or her case, communicate to the condemned person a written report of the trial judge and other information which should be considered by the committee, invite the person to make written representations, and when the report of the international human rights body is considered, they should consider that report as well. So they have now formalized proceedings before the Mercy Committee. So that's going to start another whole round of litigation, or is capable of another whole round of litigation. So I don't want to bore your listeners with too much detail.
No, it was necessary.
Pratt and Morgan is only one problem. We have the problem of what to do about the international bodies. We have the problem of what to do about time in relation to the international bodies. We have the problem of what to do about formal procedures before the Mercy Committee. And last, but by no means least, and each of these things has been delineated in a case from the Caribbean, not always Trinidad. Pratt and Morgan was a Jamaican case.
Yes, it was.
Lewis, the case in which they shocked us by changing their mind on the Mercy Committee, I think is also a Jamaican case. And then last, but by no means least, there is our old friend, prison conditions. I appeared for the state, only for the cost of my airfare and hotel, That looks a bit silly now in the light of what the state started paying lawyers in later life. But never mind.
But I think it's pretty important that you clarify that. Yes, for many other reasons.
One of the cases I appeared in was Thomas and Hilaire, and that case dealt with international bodies. That case rejected prison conditions as a ground, particularly where the local judge had said that the prison conditions were the best we could manage. But lo and behold, in Lewis, when they reversed their position on Mercy Committee, they reversed their position on prison conditions and said, no. We have to have a proper investigation of these prison conditions. And if the prison conditions are too savage, they didn't use the word savage. They're Englishmen. They'd use some more guarded insults.
Yes, cruel and unusual.
If the prison conditions are too savage, and you've kept a man for 5 years, even if you're patent compliant, they may say that even if you're patent Morgan compliant, the fact that you've kept him in such bad conditions is a double punishment, cruel and unusual, commute to life. So the idea that somehow we're going to, get over Pratt and Morgan and way presto, we hanging people the next day, pie in the sky.
So, Senior Counsel, what you're saying, Senior Counsel Martin Daly is the voice that you're listening to. As it was necessary for context that he laid out the obstacles in addition to the Pratt versus the AG of Jamaica, which is the Pratt and Morgan case. He mentioned all the other areas that we must overcome, including the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights
and
the
in order
WC
to
Committee.
Overcome those, the parliamentarians of both sides will have to sit down and agree on an appropriate constitutional amendment. And in one of the cases, the Privy Council said very plain, we're not doing this, not in this my kind of language, very elegant, we are not doing it, we're not taking on any of this without a constitutional amendment. And then if you pass a constitutional amendment that shows that the people of Barbados, which was the case they had at the time, people of Barbados are wholeheartedly behind this, then we will, reluctantly, their lordships will have no choice but to carry out not to order a suspension.
The will of the people, yes.
So they have recognized that a constitutional amendment will take care of all of this.
So just that our listeners be very...
there's a lot of work to be done besides setting up a bureau to track cases.
Take all the arguments pro and against death penalty. Instead, look for that fundamental area you just mentioned of the nation moving to change the Constitution, and that is one way to get there. But in the case of the Prime Minister, was it just frustration that I'm not asking you to be in his mind, but he said, regardless of deterrence, we're going to carry it out. You're saying that from all you have said, that is nice, but it is not going to happen, including everything
I'm sure he has in mind, and he's taking technical advice. I'm not the only person who knows what these cases have said. I've given interviews in Jamaica, and they've pressed me for these kinds of details, and they asked me, well, if it's strange, peculiar to Trinidad, I said, no, two of the leading cases came from Jamaica.
Yes.
So I sent this material to the television station in Jamaica, and that's just all by way of saying that these things are so well known by the technical people that I'm sure when the Prime Minister is considering this matter, the technical people will bring all these things to his attention.
And these things may be under consideration unbeknownst to us.
Might very well be. After all, I did a formal death penalty advice at one time because I'd been in 2 or 3 of the cases. And then somehow that death penalty advice arrived in the Parliament, and they read out the bits that they thought were good and left out the bits that they thought were bad. Which forced me to write these columns, over a 2 to 3 year period every time it pops up. And I hope I'm not being too technical.
No,
I think people will understand. Prison conditions is the easiest one to understand. Court will say, no matter you kept me for only 5 years, if the conditions were so degrading. Rafiq Shah had a piece in the Express in which he described while he was in jail on mutiny charges, the bedlam that used to go on with when you could hear the trapdoor being greased, and when you could hear the trapdoor fall, and when you could hear the men singing hymns for the condemned men the night before. Those are quite apart from the lack of proper sanitary facilities and the lack of airing, as they call it. Those are all, when you accumulate all of those things, that's real mental torture, and those things have to be ameliorated. Otherwise, prison conditions will become an argument that you're punishing me twice, once by giving me the death penalty and then making me wait for the death penalty in those kinds of conditions. Surely your listeners will understand that very easily. The other ones may be a bit more difficult, a bit more technical.
Yeah, that's very clear. I will acquiesce to what you said. I may have a whole different private discussion as to what is cruel and unusual if you're sentenced to death, but that's
as to what?
What's cruel and unusual after you've been sentenced to death, but that's...
Yes, of course. Many people in Trinidad say, if you kill somebody and you get frightened every day of your life, what's left of your life, good for you. People may well say that. But the courts may not agree, and therein lies the problem.
Therein lies the problem.
Jail not supposed to be nice, but,
exactly.
The jurists and the judges may have a different view.
Via explaining why the talk of the death penalty is the wrong argument as far as which goes first, the chicken or the egg. You made a lot of things clear to us this morning. For that, I am thankful to you, Senior Counsel. You're not going yet, however. 25 minutes away from the top of the hour. There are some other areas that I wanted to get from you, and one of them, Senior Counsel, is this question of street dwellers in Trinidad and Tobago. It is a problem, has been a problem, will continue to be a problem. I am totally in confusion, listeners. I'm switching gears here because I'm coming to the state of street dwellers in Trinidad and Tobago. If you have folks who are continuously on the street, you pick them up and you put them into a detention center. You seek to give them the assistance, whether it be mental, in the case of, if it's a mental issue, if it's a drug addiction problem, you're looking to get them help. However, you're housing them somewhere. But they keep leaving all the time. Can you forcibly keep a person who can be deemed a menace to the society and to themselves? Can you forcibly keep them in a shelter, for instance, is my question. Because oftentimes when this has been raised, the argument that comes back at us, or the retort rather, is that there is so much we can do, but if they decide to leave the shelter, there is nothing we can do because we cannot hold them against their will. Would you make clear to me and listeners what is the problem in housing street dwellers and keeping them there even if they want to leave?
Well, generally what you've said is right. You cannot imprison someone. You cannot take away someone's liberty unless you follow a method that is prescribed by law for doing so, such as, of course, arresting them on a charge and that sort of thing. But generally, you cannot deprive people of liberty without what's called due process. I, like everyone else, have suffered from the unpleasantness of homeless persons, either in the street or on my business premises. Mm-hmm. So I am not, I'm not taking this from an ivory tower. If I want to go to my office, like now, on a weekend, I have to sort of have about 6 pairs of eyes just to open my gate and open my door. Mm-hmm. So I want listeners to understand that I'm not coming from some ivory tower position. But it's easy to understand why you can't just lock people up, because from the time you use the word menace, maybe some of the things that I said on your program this morning might be considered a menace to people who don't like it. So what, you're going to come and lock me up because I am a menace? So this whole question of just depriving people of liberty can't work. And in order to deal with these people are homeless. I accept that some of them are violent. I accept that some of them have mental problems. And I accept that we are at risk for many of them. But there are other persons there who are fairly benign. They may be dirty and so on. But you have to look at the various causes. Some of them is the result of family breakdown. Some of them are the result of drugs. Some are mental illness. So you can't have a one-size-fits-all remedy for this. And there again, you have to have some kind of coherent social development policy that takes care of these things. You could, of course, charge everybody for loitering, lock them up for a night, bring them before the court, sentence them to some days, but they will always come back out. So that's not, the lockup is not the solution. You have to have remedies. You have to have remedies that are fashioned for those who are mentally ill, those who are on drugs, and those who have just been broken by life or bad relationships.
So instead of putting them in a shelter, for instance, you pick up somebody who is an addict, you take them to a recovery home. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, but we have so few of those.
But
and
even
of course,
if
in metropolitan countries, as part of a solution, at least on a temporary basis, they provide them with the drugs they need, because you can't always take them off of it straight away.
Right, you give them a weaning process.
You have to fashion different remedies You have to find out why are these people on the streets. The ones that are mental and are likely to do harm, well, I am sure there are procedures under the mental health laws to deal with those, but not everybody is going to fit that bill. And I feel particularly strongly about the people who are on the streets because life just went bad for them. They couldn't pay the rent. They got thrown out. Their marriage broke up. Their relationship broke up. And I don't think just calling them, just having a sort of revolving door for loitering is going to work. We have to have social services that are expert and capable of addressing the different things that put people on the street.
20 minutes before the top of the hour.
But I mean, it's just such an authoritarian culture. Everything is hang them, beat them, lock up, regardless of whether they deserve it, you know.
Well, trying to...
I mean, I'm not sure that people, you know, adults deserve a flogging, but I mean, we're just so authoritarian. We just so unresearch oriented.
But you
don't listen to any of the people who understand these things.
You will agree, however, that it's very difficult for a citizenry that's living every day, not the unsightliness, but what is quite threatening sometimes. Street dwellers.
I couldn't go to my office for 6 weeks at one time.
What?
Because of an inhabitant. Of course I understand how frightening it is, and I'd have to take somebody with me, and I'd have to say to the person, well, you have to stay in the car in case you have to drive out. But I understand it 100%.
Okay.
100%. I've been abused, I've been insulted, attempts have been made to make me afraid. So I'm not in an ivory tower. I have an office in Port of Spain, and I have to deal with all of these things. And my partners have to deal with all of these things.
But in trying to find a solution, that is the reason I asked you the question, then what is there, I mean, how do we go about fashioning something that can help the citizenry feel safe? In addition to, there's the other question. Folks ask, for instance, so I'm going down the street, I'm attacked by a street dweller. Where is my compensation? What is my recourse?
Charged with the appropriate offense, and I'm locked up, and then a mental evaluation has to be made to then discover whether you can justify an extended period of detention under the mental health laws.
I've got a car, and the car has been damaged, Mr. Daly, and I don't know, you know, the car is damaged. Like, where do I go? Who do I hold responsible?
Well,
do I hold the state responsible?
I have the same problems. I don't have an answer. My answer is you have to get the people, reduce the number of people on the streets, but you have to do it by different kinds of interventions. There I go using the jargon word. Different kinds of interventions. You can't just, you know, some of these people are really just life's unfortunates, as my deceased mother might have called them. Life didn't go well with them. They lost their job, they lost their family. I think they were put out for some quite ridiculous reason, for a tattoo. I mean, you know, all of these things, and you must have different strategies to deal with these things. And of course, you need to have appropriate police patrols. That if you know somehow or other the people know that the police are around the corner, but comes back to the same thing again. We have the traffic is made worse because we don't have, you know, manual traffic management.
You're telling me...
Get away from these things, in my opinion. People will have other views, but I have what I consider a coherent view of what we need to be doing and how we need to manage a society. And how we cannot duck out of doing the nuts and bolts things and just hang everybody, lock up everybody, or whatever.
I'm not one for locking up anybody. I was looking, and I'm not saying that you're saying I am. I was just looking at how can we best help the people on the streets, and one of the ways that has been used is to find a place where you can, a shelter where you can offer them accommodation for those who are just, as we say, hit a bad luck period, and you train them, and you know, and stuff like that. And those who are addicts, you get them into a rehab area, and
that's right.
And the mentally ill, you take them and you send them to the institution to treat with them. But if you take them to this shelter,
are doing this work, but the NGOs are not properly funded. The priorities for the spending of state money are all wrong. We should have made the Taruba Stadium into the kind of shelter you're talking about. We didn't need another stadium for $12 billion or whatever it costs. It's all about prioritizing what the society needs and understanding that not all problems can be solved by the application of authoritarian methods. Sometimes authoritarian methods are necessary. somebody who's deranged, mentally deranged and violent, you apply an authoritarian solution to them. But there are other people for whom that is not appropriate and it's not humane.
Understood.
And
Martin,
it's also a problem of policing.
we're back to where we began.
I'm afraid so. And why should I come off it? Because
Yes.
I suffer from lack of policing in a very minor way. Thank God none of these, terrible things have been visited on my family yet.
Thank
But
goodness.
nevertheless, I can see how other people are suffering, paying the ultimate price. And then no, very rarely is anybody held.
Senior Counsel Martin Daly, I cannot have you leave here. I've got myself 10 minutes again remaining, and I'm not going to have you leave here. And you're going to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think the column I read from you spoke to, and I'm pulling it off the top of my brain, the greatest pappy show on earth.
You mean Carnival?
Yes, I cannot get away from that because I read the column and I was laughing because the only other thing to do outside of that was to cry. I mean,
But why are we fooling ourselves? I lie incessantly. I understand completely that the aspects of Carnival that belong to the people. But you can't sell, however people-oriented it is, you can't sell tickets for a show where someone has to wait until 2 in the morning to hear. It has to be prime bands and prime time. Everybody knows that's my refrain. So if you don't want to sell tickets for a show and you just want to have open seating, come whenever you feel like it, that's fine. But don't fool ourselves by saying we are producing a show or that we can monetize the enormous skills and self-discipline of the players under the current arrangements. We have to make a choice. We can't just keep fooling ourselves and mama-guying and pappy showing ourselves that something is a show when it doesn't really conform to the normal requirements of a show, which is you buy a ticket, you get in, you get an assigned seat, assigned place to stand up. The show has a program, it has a duration, and you can be safe when you go home. Who's going to stay in the North Stand until after 9 o'clock at night, for example? Very few people.
Yes. I don't know if I got a chance to congratulate you on your on your steel band. I would just
I play sailor with All Stars, but I love everybody and I get along well with everybody. But I'll take the congratulations nonetheless.
Have you listeners met Martin Daly, the politician? No, you have not. Okay.
No, there's no note, but that's a fact. I have good relationships.
I hear that.
And in fact, that's another thing. With very little encouragement from the leaders, other than the provision of large prize money. It was unheard of 3 decades ago for rival bands to play in each other's yards and to visit each other's yards and so on. And all of that, the people on the ground have fixed.
Yes.
It's not about being a politician. I enjoy the good relationships with various people just as they enjoyed among their own selves in the fraternity.
What is it?
Not giving a political answer. I genuinely believe that. In fact, last year, as everybody knows, my wife predicted that Despas would win the panorama from the start, and everybody say, "What is a turncoat? You're playing sailor in one band," and you know what I mean.
He playing sailor and ain't afraid powder. That's straight and simple.
Yes, well, exactly.
Martin Daly,
sailor and absorbing somebody else's powder.
Take me into the Marsh Gras because you were equally equally savage on the thing we call the Marsh Gras and what it is.
I am disappointed. Here we are scrunting for revenue and for employment opportunities and so on. And we are squandering these wonderful resources. What's so hard about designing a show in which you have your premier calypsonians? We can't go on having 16 and 20 people in a final, picking 12, then the courthouse put back 2, and then a tie puts back 3. I mean, that's not how it works. And so we have to accept that by the time you get to the big yard, you're the best of the best.
So all the competition should happen before, and your Dimanche Gras creme de la creme should, in fact...
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
And then there will be no problem in having whatever number you decide on. You're 10 or 12. I don't see how it can be more than 12. You're 10 or 12, and it depends whether you're singing more than one song. And then you have an appearance by whether it's the first, second, and third in the in the panorama. I'm not recognizing all these divisions between small, medium, and large. You have an appearance by that band, or maybe more than one. Maybe the junior panorama winner as well. And then you have your first three in your kings and queens, and you have a great time is had by all. You have to have proper lighting, of course. The lighting is another big problem, and so on. But why is this so hard? But it's hard because everybody is trying to pursue too many conflicting objectives.
Well, one of the things that I find rather disturbing is that when I had a conversation with the chair, Kennedy Silver, he himself said the NCC is a tiger that cannot bite because of the way it was set up. So that's a little disturbing.
Yeah, but the government could bite because they're holding the purse string. And it's time for the government can bite if it likes by saying, look, we would prefer it's done this way, have a proper consultation and see if you could get. For example, the people in the North say you used to have a wonderful semi-final for Panorama. It used to be like maybe the Wednesday, I can't remember. It was a weekday before the final where people got a second chance before being eliminated from the big night. So you could reintroduce that, and subsidizing those things makes sense because you're subsidizing excellence, you're subsidizing ambition, and you're giving an opportunity for people who are here in Carnival Week who would otherwise miss these things if they have to be here from the semifinals. So there are things that can be discussed, you know.
One of the reasons
I will stick it out until 2 o'clock in the morning as long as my knees and age permit. But it's really not that thing.
Yeah, two kind of permits in that case. Martin Daly, one of the reasons we're so happy whenever we get him is because there's so many facets to him. We started out, as you realize, talking about juryless trials. We went into the death penalty. I moved him into the area of the street dwellers, and we're dealing with his column right now because he is a columnist, as you know, and we're talking about the greatest poppy show on earth. One of the areas that you, and correct me if I misunderstood, but I thought from reading your piece, you were in favor of there being multiple viewing sites. Many people argue that what we have is almost a segregated carnival day because of the routes that some bands choose to go as against the others. If I remember well from your column, you seem not to have a problem with that.
Well, I think the whole thing is over-centralized, and with those number of trucks, it's not possible to use the same routes that we have been using since I was a schoolboy. I have been to New Orleans many, many, many times. I've seen what they do there, and it's not nearly so over-centralized. I accept the discussion about having more than one venue, and who will go to what venue at what time requires very sensitive discussions because you don't want to reawaken this argument between Canboulay and Mardi Gras. But all of these things have to be the subject of consultation. But every time you have a new band on the road, you have at least 4 or 5 more trucks. And exactly, I played my first mass in the road when I was in school. My band leader was John Humphrey. The queen of the band was Julia Edwards. And the king of the band was a man called Strasser, who used to do floats. We left Frederick Street at 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock on a carnival Monday, 11 o'clock on a carnival Tuesday, sailed through everywhere, and everybody had a great time, but there were no trucks. And exactly the same route that we passed in that ancient time, is exactly the same route that we are passing now, with more people and a gazillion trucks.
But are you concerned?
How is that going to work?
Are you concerned about those who argue that the way it is being done now, it is segregating the classes in the country around Carnival time?
Yes, I am concerned about that. But it doesn't require having the so-called room to see that Carnival is already segregated. It done happen already, so let's try and make it unhappen. It done segregate long time. So why think that only changing a venue is now going to produce segregation? Not going to produce segregation. It might simply highlight what has already happened. That the capitalists have taken the festival from the people.
Martin Daly, let me thank you so much for being here. A couple of things that we have to put the right priority as to what we're going to do vis-a-vis arresting our situation here. Mr. Daly made it repeatedly clear that the first priority, as he has articulated before, is to get a police service that is not failing the citizenry in that area. The argument as to the death penalty, there are obstacles in the way, even if you go past the oft-articulated Pratt Morgan situation. There are many others, including between the UNCHR and the IACHR, which is these are obstacles that we have to get past. And of course, street dwellers. I guess from what you said, we're gonna have to live with that for a while until we.
Well, we don't have to live with it. But may I just thank your listeners? I'm sure that I tested their patience because you kept me on for so long.
No, it was a pleasure to have you
hope
here.
that I hope I was able to keep their interest, and I'm sorry that I had strong opinions about things. But I have nowhere else to go. I live in here all my life. I participated in things all my life. But I feel I may have tested their patience.
No, I don't think you did.
And I apologize if I did.
I always say the more I listen to you, the better I get. So we're moving on.
Well,
you've got a choice this morning, sir, between Teddy Pendergrass, who would have turned I think it was 67, and Diana Ross, who would have turned 73. I'm going to leave out our listeners. Just before I do that, I'm going to thank my guests for being here. Mr. Lindsay Dudai, President of Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, Clyde Elder, who is the Acting Secretary General of the Communication Workers Union, and of course my final guest, Senior Counsel Martin Daly. It is the birth anniversaries of Diana Ross, who is still with us, and Teddy Pendergrass, who has left us. You saw Diana Ross. What is the most moving song by Diana Ross that you recall, sir? Your favorite?
Oh, I don't recall the particular pieces. I just recall how she moved on the stage and just the whole aura. I don't remember the individual song.
Good enough. She had a song from Mahogany that's reminiscent of Billie Holiday. As a matter of fact, it was Good Morning Heartache was Billie Holiday. That to me is one of the more moving songs. But the theme of that... What was that?
No, well, you're the DJ, so I leave it that to you.
All right, so then I thank you very much for taking the time. I'm going to leave them with Diana Ross.
Thank you to your listeners.
I thank you, so you have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you for spending the time with us.